All right, this is the final video for this week, so thanks for sticking with this. Maybe this should be a little shorter. I'm not going to promise anything, but yes, I haven't touched this project. I literally have hit record on this just right as if you watched the last video, there's no space in between. So you're literally looking at the same project from the last tutorial. But let's do a little thought experiment here. Let's say I'm in love with what I built. I got this cube, I got this trigger box. I enter and exit, let's just take a look at it again, gaze upon what we brought in this world. I enter, light turns on, I exit, light turns off. What if I wanted 100 of these? What if I'm like, this is it. This is the entire basis of this amazing installation that there's like some deep artistic merit in the idea of 100 of these turning on and off when you enter in and out of it. I don't judge you if you think that's the I'm sure there's an art project in there somewhere. It's not coming to me in the moment. But how could we do this that doesn't involve copy pasting, going into the level blueprint, setting each one up individually? That is where you need what's known as an actor blueprint. An actor blueprint allows you to create one asset that has multiple other assets along with built-in logic of how it should behave. And we can also set it up where it can have individual parameters that we can tweak while still having that overall parent logic, if you will. If you've ever made a class in another programming language that's not different structurally, this is like the same kind of core concept in some ways. We're just building some smart pieces of code that we can reuse and also tweak as needed based on individual preferences. Enough talking, let's get into it. So I'm going to go back to my content folder here, and I'm going to say new folder, and I'm going to call this one blueprints. And I'm going to right click in it, and there's something that says create basic asset blueprint class. Beautiful. It's going to give us a lot of choices. The only ones we're really going to touch in this class are actor, pawn, and character for the most part. I guess you could even go down, there's just a lot going on. Do not worry about it. We are going to work with an actor blueprint. I'd say 90%, no, maybe even 98% of the time, you're going to be working with actor blueprints. And just to, like what it says here, an actor is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world. Wonderful. It's kind of what we want to do. And I'm going to call it BP. That's a naming convention. It's really popular. And I'm going to call it Light Cube. Maybe, it kind of gets at the idea of what it is. And I'm going to double click on it. And this is going to give us something that is similar to the level blueprint, but a little bit different. And what's similar is it has an event graph tab over here. And it has things like event begin play, event actor begin overlap, and event tick. It also has two new things. Actually, a couple new things. It has a components window over here. It has a construction script, and it has a viewport. And the viewport is almost like a whole new level. It's not a level, but it's the same structural 3D kind of like can pan around and whatnot. So what this is, the difference in this, a level blueprint only lets you reference things individually that are in the level. There's only one level blueprint for each level, but there's no limit to how many like actor blueprints you can make and you can place. And this is not true, but for our purposes right now, the only thing really that an actor blueprint is dealing with are the things that we're adding to an actor blueprint. If you've ever used Unity, this is essentially the same thing as a prefab from my understanding. But we're going to compile, sorry, not right word, but we're going to, use multiple different things and put them in here and build logic around it. And we can start over here with the add component. And the components we can add are structurally the same things that are available in the place actors window back in our main viewport. So I'm going to start by adding a cube. And you can see when I add it in our viewport, we can see a cube there. And that's great. That's exactly what we want. And then I'm going to add a point light. And I don't see the point light because it is right there in the center. and I can bring it up, and this is great so far. I'm going to lower the attenuation radius. I remember I want the light to be in the front of it, so I'm going to drop it down over here. And this viewport has its own internal lighting to see things, so we're not seeing it as it would be in the out there. I guess the intensity here is like much more intense than I remember it being there. But that's another thing to reference here. If I hit compile, right now this point light is a child in the hierarchy of this cube. What does that mean? This is really common in any kind of 3D modeling kind of structure. If I move the cube, the child and anything else that's a child moves with it. It moves, like everything maintains its relativity to it. But if I move the point light, the cube does not move. But if I go back to the cube, it's keeping the same relative kind of structure. This is really important to understand. It's just like, you know, you'll get the hang of it, but there's reasons like I would want one single thing that when I'm moving it, that's kind of the structure upon everything and how it's working. So I'm going to make sure this is back at 0, 0, 0. I can get my point light kind of right here and see it's kind of blown out right there. Let's like try, let's say 20,000. I'm going to hit compile and save. And I'm actually going to copy paste Command C, Command V, floor 2, and put it over here because I just want to start in a new area. And you know, like I'm actually just going to also I don't need that. I think I can right click and say, can I save, create a folder just based on things no, it doesn't look like it. So I'm going to right click and say create folder, and I'll say tutorial 1. And if you even really want to get into it, I can just hide it. Cool. You know, like I think that's a lot better. Maybe I'll make another folder that says tutorial 2 just to keep things organized. Directional light kind of exists outside of any of those things. I just added the floor 2. There we go. Right one. I have my BP light cube here. I'm going to drag this out. And you can see I've got this cube with a light in front of it. And I can drag another one. And maybe I'll bring another one in here and rotate it. And that parent-child thing I was talking about, see how the way it rotates with it? I'll make a little bit of space. And I'm only doing this to prove a point. I'm not going to clean this up too much. You kind of get the idea. We're basically building this kind of like reusable thing, you know? And what's nice is since this is like kind of a class, if I go back here and I make a change, like let's say I change the light color to red, and I hit compile and save, it's going to update every instance of that class that already exists in our level. So this is major. I mean, this is like huge that we don't have to go back and, you know, we can work off of one thing and send that out to everything else without having to do all this busy work. So, you know, you can already start to see where we're going with this and some of the major benefits of this style of thinking. So let's go back. Let's continue exploring. I'm going to go back and bring my light down to the basics and stuff. I'm going to keep the color of this to be the same. I don't need it to be green because I'm going to do some other light stuff with the color stuff with the light. And I'm going to bring the intensity back down to 0. If I go to the event graph, it makes me remember the next thing I need is a overlap trigger. So I can go to box trigger. In this, I don't know why they call it box collision. Maybe it was always box collision. I can't remember. And let's see. It's very small. So let's get it right there and scale it up a bit. Maybe like 1.4 or 1.5 and 1.5. Nope, not that one. Oh, I'm gonna lower my camera speed. And oh, it's so close. There's like the OCD part of me that wants to get it perfect, but yeah, why not? 5.5. Maybe that's it. And then I can extend this out. Cool. And then another thing, I don't want the box to be a child of the point light. You know, if I wanted to move this light, I want this to be parented to the box because that's really like what we're looking at. So I can drop here to detach it from the point light. And it actually detaches it from everything. So I'm going to drag it onto the cube. And you can see now, again, we have it set up that when I move the cube, we're in good shape. Another fun thing is when I scale the cube, this is a parent-child relationship. Everything scales with it. The lighting, it doesn't really scale. Like, I guess it is, but like, I don't think it scales like the intensity of the light. It's mainly more for like shapes and sizes of things. But we'll take a look at this again in a little bit. So we'll go back to the event graph here and remember, I know there's this add event actor begin overlap. This is a different thing. I know it's probably pretty confusing, but we want to make one. I can just delete it. We want to make one that's specific to this box. That's why we added this box. So again, I can right click on the box and say add event. And this is a little different than our level blueprint gave us. Actually, no, I just did it a different way. I right click, say add event for box because I have that selected, collision. Begin overlap. And it gives us like a lot more stuff this time. I hope I didn't double check this before I made this tutorial, so I hope it's not more complex or something I was forgetting. I think this should all work the same. And then let's drag off our point light. We can just drag off in this. Set intensity. Timeline. Light intensity. Double click. I'm speeding through this because we kind of did this. I'm changing the length. I'm adding a float track. 0. And you know what I'm going to do? And I promise this will make sense. Oh, sorry, that's 0, 0. That's right. I'm going to do 0, or sorry, 3. And I'm going to change the value to 1 for the intensity. Which, okay, sure, that's probably not going to be that bright, but I promise I have a reason for doing that. And then I am going to do similar things where I am going to grab the other actor and say equal branch. True play. And I have to drag off of this and say get player pawn. I'm going to delete this event tick. We're not going to use it today. Just copy shamelessly. Other actor. True. Reverse. Set intensity. And the reason, and the lighting intensity, you know, I'm going to rename this new track to intensity just to have everything be as clear as possible. Right there. The reason I made this 1 is I can drag off of this and I can say multiply. And as you can see, there's a float times float. And this is just good practice for working with normalized values. I believe a normalized value is like just when something's in a range of 0 to 1. It's almost like you're kind of like setting a range that's human readable. And what's nice about this is we can always multiply this to the value we need it to be. I don't want to if let's say I get this wrong, it's like 15,000 rather than 20,000. I don't want to go in here, go to this key, change the value. You know, like all we have to do out here is just really quickly, and I'll show you different ways in which it's even better going forward, but I'll change this to 20,000 and hit compile, save. I still have these three things out here. I really hope this works because I did not double check this before starting this tutorial. And it's perfect. You can see and this is the beauty of blueprints, and this is just the basis of so much of what we do in this kind of coding environment. Is we have made one thing that's replicable with its own internal logic that can be propagated throughout the game. So here, what if we wanted each of these to behave a little differently? We can do that with variables. So let's take a look. One obvious variable is the intensity of this light. So I'm going to drag off of this number here. I want to be able to change that on the fly. And I can say promote to variable. And I'm going to say light intensity. I know you can't see it. Oh, it's already unused. Maybe I'll say brightness. I know I'm getting a little redundant, but you know, we're building our own kind of naming convention now here. Down here in variables is components, obviously. These are some of the things that just exist. I don't quite know why they show it, but we've added a float variable called brightness. And the default value, we always need to compile, and we can change that here. Again, like, yeah, this is a little helpful, but like maybe I don't want to mess with this too much. Like, I don't want to go in here every time. And this doesn't target a specific thing. So what we can do is we can go to this eye kind of icon next to the variable, and it says variable is not public and will not be editable on an instance of this blueprint. Turn it on, the opposite. It is public. It is editable. And if I compile and save, I'm saving this where I saw something I wanted to. Now if I just click on any of these blueprints, and let's move them into our folder. You can see under default they each have the brightness variable. So this one I could set to 4,000. This one I could set to 40,000. And this one, let's just 200,000. I don't even know what it's going to look like. So this one's 4,000. It's still pretty bright. This one's much, maybe this wasn't the best. It's kind of like, doesn't totally work because I guess it's a little bit softer on that one. So this was, I'm going to show you some other examples. That wasn't the best one, but you get the idea. We're exposing variables in our blueprint and turning them into parameters and making them editable back in our world outliner in a much faster, more like understandable way. So what if I had the lighting color also be something that we wanted to play with? And this is something where I can actually go to my construction script, I think. Everything in an event graph only happens once you change the event. So in my construction script, this will all happen before you hit play. Like this is like the construction of the whole object itself. I don't use this a ton, but like this is a good use case of like, what if I wanted the point light to always have a different color before I even got into anything? I can say like set color. Okay, cool. And sometimes it's just that obvious, you know, like if you want to change something. Another good thing to note is, like I said, anything in the details panel of something, actually this isn't the right place to look. If I go to my point light here in my details, anything here that you want to change programmatically in like a event graph, this is what you're looking for. If you want to change the source length, drag off and say set source length. You know, like that's kind of like the first place to start if you're ever wondering what can I do to change a behavior or a parameter of something. So right here, there's this thing that says new light color. Again, I'm going to drag off of it and say promote to variable. And I'll say light color. And I'll make it editable. Compile. Now, if I go back here, you can see that there's a new light color drop down. And, you know, let's just do the basics. R, G, B. Hit play. Oh wow, this tutorial's going so much better than I ever hoped. It's all working perfectly, and I feel like I'm really getting this concept across. This actor blueprint is just fantastic. Like we could even, you know, we could even do things like building the scale and size of it into, you know, we drag off of the box here in the construction script and say set scale. Let's see, set relative scale. That just means that you know, if everything's in a current iteration is 1, 1, 1, if we add to it to subtract to it. This is redundant, and I'll show you why in a second. But promote to variable. This is not a float, but a vector because it's 3 values together. Technically, it's a vector 3. And I'll say scale. All right, let's call it size, because that's more in our wheelhouse of what we're exploring, I guess. Save. Oop. Sorry, I hit the browse. I guess it just takes me to where that is in the outliner there. And now I have, oh, did I not make it visible? Yep. There we go. Compile, save. Now I can, uh-oh, did I grab, oh, I think I did this wrong. Yes, I think I was supposed to grab the cube, not the box. So right now you can see I'm scaling the individual like trigger volume. So let's get rid of that. Let's grab the cube. And it's still a scene component. It's a component of the scene. So I can still just say that's the target. Compile. And everything's totally out of whack because I believe my size is probably set to 0, 0, 0 after I compiled it. So I'm going to set it to 1, 1, 1. And this makes it the initialized value of any new one that I make. There we go. And this one still had the values I left in it before, but now you see. So here we go. Brilliant. So I'm going to make, ooh, I'm just all over the place. I'm going to make this one much taller. And this one I'm going to make a little skinnier. And I'll leave the other one. Let's see how this plays out. And again, you know, this is working. You can see what I meant, the light doesn't scale. But we're getting a good sense of everything. So this is the power of actor blueprints, because now you can kind of build functionality into individual instances of something while still, anytime you want to make a change, you can come back to the whole of this. If I wanted to have different like interactive kind of events I could trigger, you know, we could also set it up. An obvious one might be if I wanted the cube to start rotating back and forth, you know, if you wanted as practice, try this. You could have a drag off of that on component begin overlap and create another. Actually, this is actually a good thing to cover. I'll do that because there's something interesting here that we need to keep in. Let's say we wanted to rotate the cube. It's a little tricky because, you know, I could always drag off of this set intensity thing, but I don't want to do that because this almost has a different logic. This triggers once, but it starts this thing, and then this triggers a bunch of times. So if I dragged off of here, it would like, if I hit a timeline up to that, it would start the timeline like 30 times a second. So I'm going to actually just alt click on these. And I'm going to drag off and I'm going to do something called sequence. This is like such an important one in the flow control stuff. Branch and sequence are like 70% of the things I build. And I'll build another one. Sequence. Sequence is pretty simple. It's just a sequence of triggers. You can basically turn one execute into multiple executes. So when this is true, it's going to be trigger this and go down that whole path and do everything you need to do. And then when that's done, trigger this one. It's a sequence of events. This is like flow control 101. So same thing here. I'm always going to start with playing and reversing the lighting intensity. But now I'm going to copy paste this. And it doesn't copy the same name, obviously. And I'm going to say length 3, yeah. And then I'm going to, actually, let's keep the same thing. Because I'm going to normalize, I'm going to multiply it. I love doing timelines with 0 and 1 because it's always easy to just multiply the 1 to be whatever you need it to be. And I'm also going to do, I'm going to change this one. This is kind of interesting. You can have it loop. And what that means actually is I'm going to start playing it. But instead of reversing, I'm going to stop it. And you can see there's a little loop symbol right there. And actually I should go back here. I'm going to rename this from intensity to rotation. And now I'm going to grab the cube, drag off, and I'm going to say set rotation. And set relative rotation, again, world rotation would, like, if you adjusted the cube in the world, like back in the game, it would override that with this value and like have it herk and jerk and stuff. Relative means like whatever the world one is, start from there and add relative rotation based on it. Again, most often I think you only work with relative, but it's just, instance specific. And actually I'm realizing we did this a little wrong. No, we didn't do it wrong. We only want to rotate on one axis, but this is actually something called a rotator, which is obviously 3 values next to each other, kind of like the transform. And what we can do, I want to do it all on the, let's go back to our viewport and just look here at the cube. I want to rotate it on the green, the y-axis, because it's going to get weird if I rotate it like that or the other way. I want it to be within the sphere of me still being inside of it. So go back to our timeline. That was right. Go back to our event graph. I need to access the Y. And if I tried hooking it up, float is not compatible with rotator. I was like, well, what do we do? There's 2 things you could do. I think you could right click and say make rotator. And you could drag off to your Y and leave 0, 0 and do like that. A lot of times what I like to do is just right click on something, and this is really helpful along all aspects of a blueprint coding. Right click and say split struct pin. And now it shows me each part of the rotator as an individual element, and I'll just hook it up to the one I want. And I need to multiply it, otherwise it's not going to rotate very much. It's 1. If I want it to loop seamlessly, this is basic geometry math. I can't remember why I know this or even why you should know it. I'm going to take it for granted that you might remember this. A full rotation is 360 degrees. So if we multiply this by 360 and it's looping and it goes back to 0, it's going to be seamless because it's 360 degrees. Oops, so I'll say multiply. And 360. And compile and save. And let's see what do we got here. Oh my gosh, so pretty. And what's nice is if I step out of it, it doesn't go back to the beginning, it just stops, remember? And like it's gonna pick up where we left off. And then this one, oh nice, I forgot, I was like, because I didn't scale it to a different size. So this is just the best tutorial I've ever made, I gotta say. I really hope you all are getting something from this, because this is like a pretty clear, succinct idea of like the things that we're kind of exploring with like kind of game development kind of engine stuff. Yeah, that's enough for this week. I have other tutorials I can send you. I'll send you this file so you can look at it and actually deconstruct it if you want. But As with all tutorials, I recommend you following along and building this just on your own. Again, keyboard, mouse, if you can do a double monitor setup, that's amazing. You're going to have such an easier time. You can watch the or your laptop is playing the tutorial and you're doing it on another screen on another computer. A lot of stuff just works very well like that. But yeah, reach out to me with any questions. And next week, the next round of classes, we're going to start to look at character skeletal meshes, like how to actually bring a character in and make a small short video game with it. So enjoy.